Well, hello everyone. I am so excited today to be joined by Sky Bergman. She is an award-winning documentary filmmaker and a multi-best-selling author. Her movie that we're talking about today is Lives Well Lived. The book is Lives Well Lived Generations, but she's doing all this incredible work beyond that, and I'm proud to call her my friend. Sky Bergman, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thank you for having me, and I'm proud to call you my friend too.
I say to people that we're kindred spirits because our birthday is one day away from each other. So I think sometimes our personalities, we have this natural inborn optimism, though to tell you the truth, I would like some of your energy sometimes. Okay.
Thanks for that compliment.
So people who just tuning in for the first time, can you tell us a little bit about Lives Well Lived, the movie, and how it inspired the book?
Absolutely. And again, thank you for having me. This is so cool to be here with you. I think we've known each other for about 14 years at this point.
Something like that. Yes.
Yeah. So I started the Lives Well Lived film because I was looking at approaching 50 and looking for positive role models of aging and just not finding them out there in the media. Everything that I saw was about how you could look more youthful and what you could do to avoid aging. And let's face it, the one thing that we have in common is that we each age every single day. So why not embrace aging instead of dreading it? And in my own family, I had this incredible role model of my grandmother, who you can see behind me. And I was, like I said, almost 50. She was approaching 100. And I went back with her to Florida for her 100th birthday, and she was still working out at the gym at that point. And she did not start working out until she was 80. So it is never too late to start something new. And she was such a great role model. And I thought, I need to find other people out there like my grandmother, because I know she's not the only one
Yeah.
who is living a very full and meaningful life. And I set on a quest, not knowing I was going to do a film, thinking I was going to do maybe a web series, where ended up interviewing 40 people, 75 years and older, with a collective life experience of 3,000 years. And it took me 4 years to do that and another year of editing. And we had a film that had a very successful run in film festivals and theatrically, and now it's on PBS. And what a ride that has been. And I think I always tell my students the more personal, the more universal the message becomes. And I think this was such a personal project for me that it really struck a chord with so many people because we have an aging population. And I think we're all looking for those positive role models. And really, the book is titled Lives Well Lived Generations, because I had so many people after seeing the film that said, "Oh, we really want to hear the lessons that you learned from working on this film for so long. And can you write something?" And I am dyslexic, so it is not easy for me to write. So that I kept putting it off and putting it off, and finally decided that I needed to sit down and write it up. And so the first half of the book is all about the lessons that I learned, and also being a first-time filmmaker. What did I go through to get the film out there and made? And the second half is really all about connecting generations, because I feel like we live in such an age segregated world. And the more that we can do to connect generations, the better off the world will be. And so that's in a nutshell, kind of the film and the book. Yeah.
That is beautifully said. And what I love about it are some of these lessons of wisdom that really drive the stories home. So if you
Mhm.
had to identify just a couple of takeaways,
Yeah.
I know there are so many, but maybe top three or four, something that lessons that really struck you.
Well, I think, the tagline of the book is resilience, positivity, and purpose at every age. And I think that that really speaks volumes of what I learned from the people that I interviewed. So I think the most important thing that I learned was having a sense of purpose is vitally, vitally important, especially as we age. But I think at any age, we need to feel like we have a sense of purpose, and that that purpose can change over time.
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons that as we age, it becomes important is because for most of our lives, we're working and we define ourselves by what our, in quotes, profession is. And when we retire from that profession, we need to find our next sense of purpose. And I think it takes a little bit of work to do that. In my film, people like Lucky Louie, if you haven't seen the film, he made mozzarella every day for his daughter's deli, but he was a retired pediatrician. So, but his new sense of purpose was to get up every morning and make those fresh mozzarellas. For Rose Albano Ballestero, she was an educator and she still teaches English as a second language early in the morning. So, the sense of purpose can be different for everyone. I think the second thing really is having a sense of community and a sense of people that you surround yourself with. And what was interesting when I did the film was it didn't necessarily have to be family. It could certainly be friends, but feeling like you were part of something bigger than yourself and like you had people that you could call on if you needed help. And I think I would say third and fourth, because they kind of go together, is this resilience and positivity. I think all the people in the film really went through some traumatic experiences, but how do you get through those experiences? And how do you make it through? And how do you end up seeing life as the glass is half full rather than half empty? And I'm often reminded of this quote by Lucky Louie. He was one of my favorite people in the film. He used to say, happiness is a state of mind. You can be happy with what you have or miserable with what you don't have. You decide. And I think a big part of that is that there are so many times in our life when we can't control what's happening around us, but what we can control is our attitude about how we deal with those things. And so that is really another thing that I learned from all these people that I interviewed.
And I love his story. You wrote a story in the book about the car broke down, and I was so lucky because this happened, and then this happened, and I was so lucky because, and he's finding the joy in, you know, conference was canceled, but I had a great day with my wife, like just looking at the bright side of life.
Yes.
So purpose.
At every, I think, sorry,
Yeah, yeah.
at every turn where he could have gone negative, he decided to twist around what was happening that day, that particular day, where his tire blew out, and then
Yes.
the conference was canceled. Everything at every moment, he could have gone very negative with it, and instead, he looked for the bright side and the positivity of in that moment of what made it better because that happened. So,
Yeah. And I love that you brought up so purpose, connection, and positivity, and purpose in particular, not just for people who are retired. I am talking to a lot of young people in coaching that they're in their 30s and they're like, I always wanted a job where I could make some money. And now I'm like, I want more than like, what's the point? I want to have something, whether it's within the job or outside, that feels like, what's my vision, my purpose in life?
right.
So,
And I think I see that teaching in the university where I might have some students who are in a particular major because I teach general education classes. And all of a sudden they realize, oh my goodness, this is not really what I want to do. And so what they thought was going to be their sense of purpose, they're kind of caught off balance because they need to kind of recenter and refigure out what it is that drives them, that gives them passion and purpose. And I think, so that's why I say, I think that sense of purpose can change at many different points during our life. I think one of the critical times, though, is when we reach that retirement age. And, because we're not working in a job that we have been in for however many decades, now we're repurposing who we are. But certainly at every age, we face having that sense of purpose and having it change.
yeah. Now, in the book, you talk about some really interesting people globally who are doing different intergenerational projects. What made you want to interview them and showcase them in the book?
Well, one of the things that I realized after the film was out for a little while was that I had this opportunity really to be an advocate for connecting generations. And I was lucky enough to grow up in an intergenerational household. I had four generations in my household. So my great grandmother was alive when I was until I was 19. And we lived with my great grandmother, my grandparents. And so, how lucky was I that I had four generations? But most people don't have that. They don't even have their grandparents around. And, I realized what a gift I had from working on the film. I like to say my grandmother left me the greatest gift, which was the legacy of 40 new grandparents and their wisdom. And I teach in the university. See how and feel how the students are so disconnected from other generations. And I was lucky enough to team up with another professor at the university who teaches a class called Psychology of Aging. And we put together a program. We called it Lives Will Live Generations, where we connected students with older adults in the community, and we had them watch the film as a kickoff party. And then we gave the students and the older adults the questions that I asked when I started doing the interviews as a starting point to have a conversation. And then we do a big wrap party at the end. I get to do a photo shoot in between. And it's so lovely to see the connections that happen. And of course, at the end, what we realize is that we have far more in common than our differences, and the only difference really is our age. And I do feel like we're combating the stereotypes of ageism, one story and one connection at a time. And I am just one of many. And so I was really became really interested in other ways that people were connecting generations, whether it's through an intergenerational symphony, or there's an organization that started out of Denmark and now is worldwide called Cycling Without Age, or Sages and Seekers based out of Los Angeles that is working to develop empathy while combating social isolation and ageism, bringing generations together. There's so many wonderful organizations. So I ended up interviewing 40 people working at different organizations, and that's the second half of the book where I asked them three questions. What was their childhood like, and how did they get into this work? What did their organization do? And what do they see as the benefits of connecting generations? And so I did that really to hopefully inspire other people to want to get into this work or want to be part of one of those organizations, or maybe start their own organization, but to think really about, even in our own lives on a very local and personal level, how can we connect with another generation?
Yeah, and I love that as a teacher, you always find those teachable moments because even within the project, there was a young person working with you who said something like, "Oh, that guy talks an awful lot." And you're like, "Don't you have these conversations with your grandfather?" And you gave him an assignment, go talk to your grandfather. You know?
Yeah, and that was wonderful. I mean, I think that was a great lesson for me, because I realized that, hey, I had this student that came on an interview with me and was so floored that he said, "Well, I didn't know, never realized that older people could talk so much." And he had a grandfather who they didn't know how to break the ice, I think was part of it, and they didn't live together. So I think having questions and having that way in was so important. And sometimes that's it, you just have to break the ice. And how do you make that happen? And I think it's really difficult if you just say to somebody, "Oh, tell me something about yourself." It's just so wide open and such an open-ended question. So I think having the list of questions, which are on my website, anybody can download them, but it's a good starting point to get the conversation going.
And you know what's funny? When I talk to couples and relationships, we have our own set of questions. It's amazing that people can be together for 10 or 20 or a lifetime, and there's always something you just don't know about the other person that you could learn and that could teach you something. And one of the things I really like about the structure of your book, it's so unique because not only do you talk about the life lessons, then you showcase all these businesses and how to get in touch with them for intergenerational work. And then that third part is, like if you want to do this in your own community, here's how you can interview people, whether it's structured or whether it's just having a conversation. So,
Yeah, and I think that that's a great thing. On my website, I have kind of a how-to do this. So on the Lives Will Live website, there's a take action section where you can go to. And like I said, you can download all the questions. Also gives you some tips on interviewing people. And in the book, that's there as well. And it's been really fun to see people take that and run with it. I'm working with Western Michigan University right now, and they did a whole year of A Life Well Lived Kalamazoo, which is where the university is, where they implemented this whole idea. And it's just lovely to see that different communities, different people, different organizations kind of picking this up and running with it. And for anyone that's an educator out there, PBS Learning Media has it's on their website. So you can use this in classrooms from grades 6 through 12 with all the core standards already attached to it. So it's really easy to plug and play into a classroom, and we'll make sure you have that information in the show notes.
Oh, nice. Okay. So, what was the process like of writing a book? So, you're a filmmaker and you the first time becoming an author. How did that feel?
Well, I don't really want to ever do it again, which means I probably will. Because I think when we say these things, I said that when I finished the film, and now I've got like 4 films in production. So you be careful what you say. I think it was good. It was very difficult for me because, like I said, I'm dyslexic. So one of the things that I did was I would record myself and then transcribe it, and that made it a little bit easier because I'm much better at speaking than I am at writing. I hired a good crew, Danielle being one of them, to help me edit the book because I feel like you should never edit your own work, and it's really good to have somebody else make sure that what you think you're saying is what you're actually saying. And then getting it out there has been wonderful. I mean, I have done lectures where people will come up to me with the book, with all these post-it notes all over as tabs of places that they've marked because they were so like engaged with what I was writing. And so I would say to anyone out there who's thinking of writing a book, just do it. The hardest part is starting, looking at that blank screen or that blank piece of paper. If you're like me and that's an issue, just record it and then transcribe it. It's so easy to do that these days, and then kind of work with that so you have a starting point and a framework. And it took a couple of years to get it done, so it wasn't like it was a quick process. I guess I am um, one of those people who has these big, hairy ideas, and I don't mind taking the time to see them through to the end. So I will work on projects for a long time before I really feel like I get them right and ready to go. And do something that you're passionate about. This is something that I love doing. So the second half of the book, where I got to interview all these amazing people who are working in these intergenerational spaces, that was fun for me. Make it fun for yourself in whatever way you can.
Yeah. And hire a book coach if you need one. Shameless
Yes,
plug. So,
absolutely.
but I want to talk, you said 4 films. So tell me what you're working on now.
Well, Lives Will Live is still out there. So I feel like that's, even though it's finished, I'm still doing a lot of speaking engagements around Lives Well Lived and podcasts and all that stuff. So even though I'm not working on the film, I'm working with the film.
Yeah.
The other films that I'm working on, one is called Mochi Suki, which is the Japanese tradition of making mochi to bring in the new year. And if you have not had mochi, mochi is rice that's steamed and then pounded until it's like the consistency of bread dough, and then they form it into balls. And it's about really the Japanese American experience as told through this mochisuke ceremony, because even when Japanese Americans were interned during World War II, they still figured out a way to make mochi, which is an amazing story of resilience. And I just interviewed George Takei for that film, so I'm very excited. He talked about his time in the camp making mochi, which was a highlight for him when he was a kid, because he had it was a very dark time, but that was one moment that was really a bright spot. And so that's going to be an amazing film. And the other film is called The Primetime Band, which is about a band in Santa Barbara, California, that are made up of about 75 people who primarily are in their 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, who rehearse every Tuesday night and then perform throughout the county. And it's really, for me, it picks up on Lives Well Lived in such beautiful ways, that sense of community, that sense of purpose, that sense of overcoming resilience. There's one person who plays the flute and can't hold it up horizontal anymore and figured out how to make a headstock so she can play it vertically, and a bunch of people that have Parkinson's, and they are all still there every Tuesday night playing, which is amazing. But then they also are part of a group called the Music Band, which goes into third grade classrooms and introduces instruments to third graders, many of whom have never touched an instrument for the first time. So
Oh.
they all get to play from a violin to a trombone to a tuba to a flute. I mean, it's amazing to see the kids light up and the older adults light up. I love this idea of older adults paying it forward to young people, and maybe lighting somebody's idea about music for the first time. And the last film is called The Jollytologist, which is a film about this guy named Alan Klein, who has done has done a TEDx talk and has been in Next Avenue. And um, he had a really interesting life. He was a set designer for Merv Griffin and Captain Kangaroo and all these things. And got married. His wife, unfortunately, very young, passed away from a rare liver disease. And he realized that the way that they got through those tough times was through humor. And so he went back to school and studied about humor and grief and has written any number of books about that. And so he has the registered trademark of Jollytologist. And I just love that. I love that concept. So that's what I'm working on right now.
Is that all? And that
That's
last one,
it for
that's
right
the
now.
first time I'm hearing it.
Yeah.
When do you sleep? Do you sleep?
I sleep in little bursts.
You're like a cat nap here, cat nap there.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
I know you're busy. You've got so much going on. Thank you for taking the time to speak with me today. I will make sure in the description of this video we'll have the website and all the information so that you can watch the movies, buy Sky's book, host an intergenerational project, all that good stuff.
Sounds good. Thanks so much, Danielle.